Good afternoon, everybody. Hell's Unicorn here once again, and I'm just going to be giving my thoughts on the goings-on in Wisconsin. I have been on record in previous videos that I am not a terribly big fan of organized labor for a number of reasons, most of it revolving around the way the leadership operates. It's not really that much different from the way that a lot of more corrupt corporations operate. In other ways, it's almost like a protection racket. And from an individualistic standpoint, it's all but impossible to continue being an individual in a working sense when you're a member of one of these unions, since everything that you get, everything that you would bargain for, is dictated by a collective organization. The very concept of a labor union, though it's not in and of itself bad if it's voluntary, works against the idea of individual liberty. Now, while that is just simply a matter of opinion on my part, there are some other factors at play here that I think need to be brought to light, and that is the issue of the federal government or a federal political party which has members in federal office is directly interfering with the internal matters of a state. And this is where I run into real serious problems with what's going on here. And I'm going to read this little bit that was put up on the Politico actually a couple of days ago, and I have not seen too many people talking about this, so I'm simply going to read from this just so you can all be aware of this, and there is, of course, a link in the description. The DNC is playing a role in Wisconsin protests, and this is on the Politico website. The Democratic National Committee's Organizing for America arm, the remnant of the 2008 Obama campaign, is playing an active role in organizing protests against Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker's attempt to strip most public employees of collective bargaining rights. The OFA, as the campaign group is known, has been criticized at times for staying out of issues like same-sex marriage, but it's riding to the aid of the public sector unions who hoping to persuade some Republican legislators to oppose Walker's plan. And while Obama may have his difference with teachers' unions, I doubt it, OFA's engagement in the fight and Obama's own clear stance against Walker mean that he's remaining loyal to key Democratic Party allies at what is, for them, a very dangerous moment. OFA Wisconsin's field efforts include filling buses and building turnout for the rallies this week in Madison, organizing 15 rapid response phone banks urging supporters to call their state legislators, and working on planning and producing rallies, a Democratic Party official in Washington said. The OFA Wisconsin Twitter account has published 54 tweets promoting the rallies, which the group has also plugged on its blog. At times when most folks are still struggling to get back on their feet, Governor Walker has asked the state legislature to strip public employees of their collective bargaining rights. Under his plan, park rangers, teachers, and prison guards would no longer be able to fight back if the new Republican majority tries to slash their health care benefits and pensions. Appeal to emotion fallacy right there. The OFA Wisconsin State Director Dan Gradone wrote supporters in an email, but that's not even the most shocking part. The governor also put the state National Guard on alert in case of labor unrest. We can't and won't let Scott Walker's heavy-handed tactics scare us. This Tuesday and Wednesday, February 15th and 16th, volunteers will be attending rallies at the state. He continued. Governor Walker won't even talk to state workers about his proposal to strip them of their rights. He is ignoring Wisconsin voices today and asking for the power to drown them out permanently tomorrow. We're ready to do all we can to make sure that doesn't happen. OFA volunteers are going to fight for our friends with state jobs, our allies in organized labor, and the freedom of Wisconsinites to organize their communities. And then there's an update. House Speaker John Boehner called on Obama to pull OFA out of the effort. I'm disappointed that instead of providing similar leadership for the White House, the president has chosen to attack leaders such as Governor Walker, who are listening to the people and confronting problems that have been neglected for years at the expense of jobs and economic growth. Boehner said in a statement, "I urge the president to order the DNC to suspend these tactics," which will not happen. Okay, so let me just break down all of this for you. The Wisconsin state government has a massive deficit, about $3.6 billion, if I remember correctly. And a good portion of this debt is primarily tied to entitlements attached to certain labor contracts. And public sector unions, in particular, have been a huge drain on the state's economy. Now, what the governor is in effect saying is that you are going to have to contribute to your own pensions. All of the assertions made by the Organizing for America officials in this article are essentially doing is they're stating the slippery slope argument, basically. It's what they're doing. They're stating that, oh, if he does this today, he might do that tomorrow. At this point in time, just speaking for myself, I couldn't care less what he does tomorrow to public sector unions. These people make far more money a year than I do, and they're going to be paid more money than I make now after they stop working. They have more than me, so following the logic of class envy, which these morons push, I have every excuse whatsoever not to like them. Now, that's not the reason why I don't like them. The reason why I don't like them is because that, similarly, in this state, unions benefit from my money regardless to whether or not I consent to it. And I don't like that at all. My state is not as far into the red as Wisconsin and New York and California are, but we're not in the world's best shape, let's put it that way. And as of the past month or so, it's a little uncertain as to whether or not Corbett will be nearly as forward on this issue as these other governors have been in these other states. But nonetheless, when they talk about things such as the freedom to assemble, what about my freedom and the freedom of others to assemble in an actual legitimate grassroots campaign and not be threatened with SEIU violence? How about that, huh? And furthermore, just to be consistent on all of this, freedom implies a certain voluntary function. You don't get to volunteer to be a member of a public sector union. The minute you get hired, you're in, regardless to whether or not you agree with it. Your only alternative is to seek employment elsewhere. Now, that is a choice, so there is a certain amount of liberty involved, at least insofar as that is concerned, and I would assert that nobody should seek public sector employment. Join a private fire company if there is one. Or if you're going to join the police force, do so under protest. I don't know. At that point, it's tough to say. But by and large, you're limited in your choices based on the way public sector unions operate. Furthermore, public sector unions are a de facto monopoly. All right, they're not fighting against corporations. This isn't private sector unions. This is people who work for the government, ergo they're working off of our money, which is involuntarily given to the government. And they are essentially voting themselves a pay raise the same way that Congress does. As far as I'm concerned, there is no difference from these moronic so-called teachers in Wisconsin that are protesting right now and members of Congress who vote themselves pay raises. It's the exact same thing as far as I'm concerned. So anyway, feel free to give me your thoughts on this. I have zero sympathy for these people in Wisconsin. And as far as I'm concerned, public labor unions shouldn't exist, and God bless any government that has the gonads to start busting them. Because frankly, unsustainability is the word of the day, and we are wrapped up in it. Nothing that is currently in place right now with regards to public employment is sustainable. In a couple of decades, we're going to be wishing that we had more people like Governor Walker in this country. With prudence to myself and benevolence to all of you, good evening.